Monsieur le Président, en l'espace de 5 mois, le prix de l'essence et du diesel a subi 4 augmentations successives, soit en décembre de l'année dernière, en février, avril et mai de cette année. Le litre du diesel qui se vendait à 37,30 roupies se vend aujourd'hui à 54,55 roupies, soit une augmentation de plus de 31%. Quant au litre de l'essence, qui se vendait à 50,70 roupies l'année dernière, il est passé à 74,10 roupies, soit une augmentation de plus de 46%. En avril de cette année, le prix de la bonbonne de gaz ménager de 12 kg est passé de 180 roupies à 240 roupies, soit une augmentation de 33,3%. Et en avril dernier, en réponse à une question parlementaire, le ministre de la Santé nous informait que les prix des 15 médicaments les plus utilisés à Maurice a connu une hausse annuelle entre 25 à 30% depuis 2017. 25 à 30% chaque année. Les prix du lait, des fruits et légumes et autres produits alimentaires ont flambé. Certes, il y a eu une hausse considérable dans le prix du fret et sur le marché mondial avec la pandémie du Covid et de la guerre en Ukraine. Mais, Monsieur le Président, les prix avaient déjà pris l'ascenseur, même avant Covid, même avant la guerre en Ukraine, à cause de la dépréciation de notre roupie. Le dollar américain, qui se vendait à 31 roupies en décembre 2014, se vend aujourd'hui à 44 roupies, soit une dépréciation de 42%. Vous avez bien entendu, sous le régime de ce gouvernement, notre roupie a perdu presque la moitié de sa valeur. Et comme on paye nos importations en devises, forcément, une dépréciation de la roupie augmente considérablement le prix des produits importés. C'est dire que depuis plusieurs mois déjà, Monsieur le Président, la population souffre de la cherté de la vie. Face à l'inaction du gouvernement, certains de nos concitoyens sont descendus dans la rue et ont manifesté leur mécontentement. La société civile, les syndicalistes, les économistes, les politiques, tous sont montés au créneau pour solliciter l'intervention du gouvernement. Au Parlement, le leader de l'opposition et d'autres membres de l'opposition ont fait plusieurs propositions, d'une part pour baisser le coût de la vie et d'autre part pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat, surtout pour ceux au bas de l'échelle, les retraités, handicapés, veuves et orphelins. L'attente était grande. Le ministre des Finances a cédé sous la pression populaire et a annoncé dans ce budget plusieurs mesures pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat d'une frange importante de la population. Mais ce n'est pas suffisant. Il aurait pu faire plus. Il aurait dû faire plus. Que représentent 1 000 roupies pour les retraités, handicapés, veuves et orphelins qui n'ont pas eu d'augmentation de leur pension depuis 2 ans et demi, alors que vous aviez promis dans votre manifeste électoral d'augmenter leur pension à 13 500 roupies. Les retraités de plus de 65 ans percevront une allocation additionnelle de 1 000 roupies sous la CSG Retirement Benefit. Cette mesure touche 169 000 retraités et coûtera environ 2,2 milliards de roupies. Quant à ceux dont le revenu brut ne dépasse pas 50 000 roupies, ils bénéficieront d'une allocation mensuelle de 1 000 roupies comme CSG Income Allowance. Cette mesure touche 350 000 personnes et coûtera 4,2 milliards de roupies. Donc 2,2 milliards de roupies aux retraités de plus de 65 ans et 4,2 milliards de roupies pour les salariés qui touchent moins de 50 000 roupies. Ça nous fait un total de 6,4 milliards de roupies qui sera puisé des contributions sociales généralisées. Mais j'insiste, le ministre des Finances aurait pu faire plus, il aurait dû faire plus, et je m'excuse. Et je m'explique. À la page 484 des estimates, nous avons un tableau récapitulatif des contributions qui ont été prélevés pour la contribution sociale généralisée. Donc, on y voit, par exemple, à la page 484, donc, que... Donnez-moi une seconde. Voilà. On voit bien que pour l'année financière 2020-2021, l'État a récolté environ 5,3 milliards de roupies. Il a dépensé 0 sous. Pour 2021-2022, il a récolté 8,6 milliards de roupies. Là aussi, il a dépensé 0 sous. Et pour l'année prochaine, l'année financière 2022-2023, il compte recevoir 10,1 milliards. Donc, si on prend les 5,3 milliards de 2020, on ajoute les 8,6 milliards de 2021 et maintenant les 10,1 milliards qu'il va obtenir cette année, le montant cumulé des contributions sociales généralisées depuis son introduction est aujourd'hui à 24 milliards de roupies. Donc le gouvernement a déjà récolté 13,9 milliards de roupies. Il va récolter encore 10 milliards de roupies, donc au total 24 milliards de roupies sous l'item contribution sociale généralisée. C'est de l'argent qui a été payé par les contribuables, les employés du secteur privé et des self-employed. Et de ces 24 milliards de roupies, combien est-ce que les mesures budgétaires vont coûter au ministre des Finances? 6,4 milliards de roupies. Donc il avait 24 milliards de roupies, il ne dépense que 6,4 milliards de roupies. C'est pourquoi l'opposition ainsi maintient que le ministre des Finances avait une marge de manœuvre suffisante pour augmenter encore plus le paiement, le transfert qu'il a fait à ceux qui ont un revenu brut ne dépensant pas 50 000 roupies. Ce n'est pas tout, Monsieur le Président. Si nous allons à la page 503 des estimates, sous l'item de Special Funds, ces fameux Special Funds, on voit que la balance au 30 juin 2022, à la page 503, la balance, on a plusieurs fonds, on a le National Resilience Fund, National Environment and Climate Change Fund, l'Auto Fund, COVID-19 Project Development Fund, COVID-19 Solidarity Fund, COVID-19 Vaccination Program Fund. Quand on ajoute tous les montants, on a 36,2 milliards de roupies. 36,2 milliards de roupies, c'est le montant accumulé dans les Special Funds qui n'ont pas encore été dépensés par ce gouvernement. C'est la balance aujourd'hui qu'a le ministre des Finances. Et après tous les paiements qu'il projette de faire pour cette année financière, il va se retrouver toujours avec un montant de 6,9 milliards de roupies. Donc il avait au moins 6,9 milliards de roupies en plus qu'il n'a pas besoin pour cette année financière pour faire ses dépenses qu'il a budgétées. Donc le ministre des Finances avait selon nous une marge de manœuvre confortable, il aurait pu faire mieux. Il aurait pu, par exemple, puiser de ce fonds pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat, pour augmenter les pensions, pour faire des transferts directs aux plus démunis. Il aurait aussi pu utiliser cet argent pour donner une allocation de chômage, surtout aux jeunes et aux femmes qui, selon Statistiques Mauritius, éprouvent des difficultés à l'embauche. J'espère surtout qu'il ne partage pas l'avis de mon bon ami Bobby Ariram, qui n'est malheureusement pas là, qui avait critiqué la proposition du MMM figurant dans notre manifeste électoral de donner une allocation mensuelle de 5 000 roupies aux chômeurs. Sur un plateau télévisé, il avait argué que si le MMM donnait 5 000 roupies aux jeunes, ces jeunes allaient utiliser cet argent, je cite, pour FIMAS. Donc, toujours est-il que les chômeurs demeurent, Monsieur le Président, les grands absents de ce budget. Pas de transfert pour eux, et on s'étonne que nos jeunes souffrent d'une dépression, nos jeunes veulent émigrer. Le ministre des Finances aurait pu aussi utiliser les réserves accumulées dans les special funds pour réduire le prix des carburants. Sur chaque litre d'essence, figurez-vous, sur chaque litre d'essence, 30 roupies va dans les caisses du gouvernement en forme de taxes et de prélèvements. Mais peut-être que le ministre des Finances ne réalise pas ce que représente une augmentation de 46% sur le prix de l'essence et du diesel pour le petit peuple, pour les chauffeurs de taxi, pour les conducteurs de vannes, pour les pêcheurs, pour les plaisanciers qui utilisent le carburant comme matière première pour gagner leur vie. Peut-être ils ne réalisent pas parce que je crois comprendre que c'est nous, les contribuables, qui payons pour ces déplacements en voiture de fonction. Donc il n'a pas à payer de l'essence, lui. Donc peut-être pour lui, ce n'est pas un gros problème, une augmentation de 46% dans le prix de l'essence. Quant au prix du médicament, je me réjouis que le ministre des Finances ait accepté la proposition du leader de l'opposition pour réduire la marge des produits pharmaceutiques par un régime de majoration régressive. Mais nous avions aussi demandé, Monsieur le Président, de permettre l'importation parallèle des produits pharmaceutiques de marque. Le leader de l'opposition avait même adressé un PNQ en ce sens le 19 avril de cette année. Le ministre du Commerce avait alors annoncé qu'il allait parler avec son collègue ministre des Affaires étrangères. Et rappelons que ce changement de régime était aussi une des recommandations de la Competition Commission. Or, dans le présent budget, pas un mot à ce sujet, pas un mot sur le changement de régime pour permettre l'importation parallèle des produits. Le ministre des Finances aurait-il cédé au lobby de ces grands messieurs de l'industrie pharmaceutique, with the people or with the big boys of the industry? Monsieur le Président, je me suis attardé sur ce sujet car certains se sont posé la question de savoir comment le ministre a pu financer ses dépenses alors qu'il crie à tue-tête qu'il n'avait pas de marge de manœuvre avec la guerre en Ukraine. Je pense que c'est clair pour tout le monde qu'il avait la marge nécessaire. Mais malheureusement, le répit risque d'être de courte durée. Les 1000 roupies risquent de s'exavérer très rapidement si rien n'est fait pour contenir le taux d'inflation et la dépréciation de la roupie. Il n'y a aucune mesure, Monsieur le Président, dans ce budget pour contenir l'inflation et la dépréciation de la roupie d'une manière significative. Aucune annonce aussi sur le prix d'électricité. Se dirige-t-on vers une augmentation tarifaire? Selon les estimates à la page 487, pour l'année 2021-2022, l'année qui vient de s'écouler, le gouvernement a déjà puisé 3,5 milliards de roupies, 3,5 milliards de roupies du Central Electricity Board. Donc le CEB avait les réserves nécessaires pour absorber une augmentation du coût de l'huile lourde et du charbon sur le cours mondial. Mais le gouvernement, l'année dernière, a pris 3,5 milliards de roupies du Central Electricity Board. J'espère que le ministre des Utilités publiques nous donnera la garantie qu'il n'y aura pas de majoration dans le prix de l'électricité. Quant à l'inflation, le ministre des Finances n'a même pas eu le courage de prédire le taux de l'inflation, préférant se référer au chiffre de 8,6% avancé par la Banque de Maurice. Or, ce chiffre, 8,6%, est contredit par Statistiques Mauritius. Dans son rapport publié le 7 juin, le jour même du budget, Statistiques Mauritius annonçait que le taux d'inflation, year on year, au mois de mai 2022, était de 10,7%. 10,7%. La tendance est certainement à la hausse et certains économistes prévoient que le taux d'inflation atteindra les 15% d'ici la fin de l'année. Mais je comprends le ministre des Finances. Les prévisions budgétaires ne sont visiblement pas son fort. Et les chiffres qu'il avance fait généralement les chiffres qu'il avance font généralement sourciller même les plus optimistes. On se souvient en outre que l'année dernière, il avait prévu un taux de croissance de 9%, avec une arrivée touristique de 650 000 personnes. On a à peine eu la moitié du nombre de touristes qu'il avait prévu. Et le taux de croissance ne sera que de 6,9%, bien loin des 9% qu'il avait prévu l'année dernière. En vérité, Monsieur le Président, le taux de croissance est bien en deçà de 6,9%. La dépréciation de la roupie ayant dopé les revenus du secteur financier, ICT et nos exportations. Donc, quand on convertit les recettes que ces secteurs ICT, offshore et manufacturiers ont obtenus en devises, dollars ou euros, c'est ça qui permet d'augmenter la croissance, d'augmenter le PIB. Et malheureusement, le ministre des Finances n'a toujours pas retenu sa leçon. Et cette année, il prévoit un taux de croissance de 8,5% en misant sur l'arrivée de 1,4 million de touristes. Parce que là, il n'y a pas de problème de la guerre en Ukraine, il n'y a pas de problème d'augmentation du coût de transport, il n'y a pas de problème pour la liaison aérienne. Il est optimiste, il va avoir 1,4 million de touristes. Et c'est clair qu'il n'a aucune intention de défendre la roupie, parce que toute appréciation de la roupie, ironiquement, se traduirait à un taux de croissance moindre et par ricochet à moins de revenus pour l'État. Donc si la roupie s'apprécie, il y a moins de revenus pour l'État, il y a moins de croissance pour ce gouvernement. Par contre, Monsieur le Président, ce qui est bien réel, c'est que ce gouvernement ne cesse de nous endetter. Contrairement à l'impression qu'il a donnée, on aurait pu croire que le gouvernement est en train de réduire notre dette publique. En réalité, la dette publique augmentera davantage en 2022-2023. Selon les estimates, la dette publique qui est de 465 milliards de roupies passera à 449 milliards de roupies l'année prochaine. Pour rappel, et c'est bon que les membres de l'Assemblée nationale et le public en général se rappellent qu'en décembre 2014, quand ce gouvernement accède au pouvoir, la dette publique était de 237,7 milliards de roupies. Aujourd'hui, notre dette publique est à 435 milliards, soit presque 200 milliards de roupies en plus. Une augmentation de 83,5%. 83,5% d'augmentation dans notre dette. Mais cette dette, elle a un prix. Tous les ans, nous dépensions des milliards de roupies pour payer les intérêts et rembourser le capital. 435 milliards, si on divise cela par une population d'1,2 million de personnes, ça nous donne en moyenne 362 500 roupies par personne. C'est-à-dire chaque Mauricien est endetté aujourd'hui à hauteur de 362 000 roupies 500. Chaque enfant qui naît dans notre joli pays naît avec une dette de 362 000 roupies sur sa tête. Et quand vous réalisez cela, Monsieur le ministre, que valent vos 1000 roupies de baby bonus que vous allez donner aux parents? Vous endettez ce bébé à hauteur de 362 000 roupies et vous leur donnez un baby bonus de 1000 roupies et vous pensez qu'il doit vous dire merci et taper la table? Et le montant de notre dette publique risque d'être encore plus conséquent si vous n'arrivez pas à vendre les biens de l'État pour les 22 milliards de roupies comme prévu dans vos estimates. Au fait, la dette publique aujourd'hui aurait pu être encore plus conséquente si la MIC, la banque de Maurice, finalement, n'est pas venue à la rescousse du gouvernement une nouvelle fois en achetant les actions d'Air Mauritius pour 13 milliards de roupies. Mais ce n'est pas la première fois qu'on entend que l'État va vendre ses biens. Lorsque l'honorable Premier ministre était ministre des Finances en 2019, il avait déjà dit dans son budget, et je cite, « We will also dispose of certain non-strategic assets to reduce the level of government debt ». Depuis 2019, ce gouvernement essaye de vendre la Mobank, essaye de vendre la NIC. Ils n'y arrivent pas, parce que ces biens ne valent pas 22 milliards. Donc je suis d'accord avec le leader de l'opposition, probablement, une nouvelle fois, c'est la banque de Maurice, à travers la MIC, qui va venir à la rescousse de ce gouvernement en payant 22 milliards pour des actifs qui n'en veulent pas. Mr. Speaker, sir, every year it is the same routine with this government. They announce a series of measures and never implement them. Then the next year, or the following year, they come back with the same measure, the same broken record, the same discrédit. You will recall, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, sir, that last year, the Honourable Minister of Finance took so much time of the House to read out an extensive list of construction and upgrading projects in high flood-prone areas for each of the 20 constituencies. It was more like a geographic class for us. Well, this year, he has done it again. And at paragraph 226, he read out again the list of areas where drains will be constructed in each of the 20 constituencies. And to make it very credible, the amount which has been earmarked for each constituency this year is lower than the amount which was earmarked in last year's budget, so that the public, when they hear him speak, they say, oh, he's done a good job. From last year to this year, he has spent a lot of money on drains, so now he has less money to spend on drains because the construction work has been done. It has to show to the public that government means business, right? Working for the people, right? Now, these work were to be financed out of the COVID-19 Project Development Fund. When we turn to page 509 of the estimate, we note under the item National Flood Management Program, estimate 2021-2022, 3.6 billion rupees. This was the amount which was supposed to have been spent during this year. This was what was budgeted. This is what we voted. But under revised estimate, which gives you an indication, it's still not final, but an indication of how much has been spent so far, we found that the amount has been revised from 3.6 billion to only 800 million. Out of 3.6 billion rupees, you spent only 800 million, only 22.2%. You have spent only a fifth of what you had targeted, of what you had budgeted. And that is what you call working for the people, with the people. We vote the money. You increase public debt because you finance the deficit through borrowing. So you borrow money, and then you don't spend. And it is not a joke. We're talking about flood-prone areas, areas where people are at risk. And this year, Mr. Speaker, sir, after the heavy rainfall and cyclone, again, houses in my constituency were flooded. Many lost their food, furniture, clothing, and personal effects. They had to take refuge in refugee centers. Some of them did not even get the rain allowance because the police simply refused to visit their home and confirm the damage. Most of these people, Mr. Speaker, sir, are very poor people, and they live in precarious houses fitted with iron sheet. They are not living there by choice. They are there because they don't have any house. They've been on the waiting list for social housing, for NSDC houses for years. And since last election, this government every year has been telling us the same thing. They are going to build 12,000 houses. 2.5 later, not a single brick has been laid. We're talking about Mauritius. Mauritius is a small island. Do you really want people to believe that it takes 2.5 years to identify construction sites? You have not been able to build a single house out of the 12,000 houses, and now you want us to believe that you will complete construction across 50 sites by 2024? Even if you want to, where will you have the manpower to do so? Where you have the construction companies to do so, to run 50 sites, 12,000 housing units? Well, we'll see next year. Probably you'll come back and you'll tell us, again, you will do 12,000 houses in a year's time. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, if there is one example of a project which has been in every single budget since 2014, it must be the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam, which happens to be in the constituency of the Minister of Finance. Government has been talking about this project for so long that really today no one takes you seriously anymore. Last year, the Minister of Finance announced that 9.4 billion rupees will be invested in the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam and its water treatment plant. I hope in your summing up, the Honourable Minister will tell us how much money has been spent on that project to date. What stage have we reached? When will the construction be completed? When will the treatment plant be operational? Because the problem with deferring projects is that it inevitably results in increased costs. With inflation, with the depreciation of rupees, all the imported materials. And it is us, the population, who will have to pay for your lack of seriousness for not having completed the dam when you were supposed to. Another recurring theme, and I'm glad that the Honourable Minister for Agriculture is here, another recurring theme is food security. Every year, a series of measures are announced to encourage local production of onion, potatoes, and other vegetables. Every year, there are measures to encourage animal breeding and livestock production. Every year, we are promised the setting up of agro-processing facilities. Last year, the government even went as far as announcing that 1,000 arpents of land would be made available by Landscope to private growers. What happened to those land? How much of these 1,000 arpents is now under cultivation? What crop is being planted on these land? Mr. Speaker, sir, we all agree that we should produce more of what we eat and eat more of what we produce. This slogan has been there since the 70s. But it serves no purpose coming up with a slogan creux if you don't have a clearly defined policy and stick to it. The reality of the situation is that there are today fewer and fewer planters. There are today fewer and fewer land under cultivation. And I'm sorry to say, but the government has its shares of responsibility. There was a time where it was very difficult to convert agricultural land to industrial or residential use. But since you have come in power in December 2014, what have you done? First, you came up with smart cities, conversion of prime agricultural land, hectares of prime fertile land converted into buildings and concrete. Then you provided incentives for agricultural land owners to convert their agricultural land into golf courses. Hectares of prime agricultural land transformed into grass for leisure activities. Then through the Economic Development Board, you allowed landowners to undertake real estate projects and sell them to foreigners. And now the Minister of Finance has announced at paragraph 172 of his speech that holders of residence permit will be given the opportunity to acquire a residential property of a minimum of $350,000, which is roughly 15.4 million rupees. Tell me, and I don't know if any of you is a landowner or have family who are landowner, but if you are a landowner and you are given the chance to sell residential property to foreigners, what will you do? Plant onion and get 33 rupees per kilo? Plant potato and get 38 rupees per kilo? Plant cane and get 25 rupees per kilo of sugar? Or will you develop the land, sell it to foreigners, and make millions? But before coming to the scheme, I hope that this government has evaluated the impact of which such a measure will have on the agricultural sector. Now, the Minister of Finance did not say anything as to where will these houses be located. Will there be any restriction, or would holders of residential permit be able to acquire a house anywhere in Mauritius, as long as they are paying the solidarity tax and they're paying at least $350,000? But more shockingly, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister who will chair a committee to examine each application on a monthly basis. No, come on, seriously. The Prime Minister will look at each application, doesn't have anything better to do than sit and look at the application to buy a flat of 15,000 rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, allowing foreigners to buy residential property worth 15 million rupees would inevitably create a price hike in real estate market. Already it is extremely difficult for a new couple to acquire property. With this measure, it will simply be impossible for them to do so. So I'm urging the government to reconsider this decision. This is surely not for the benefit of Mauritians looking to acquire a home. But maybe the government is turning to this measure out of despair. Out of despair because they cannot attract foreign direct investment, except in real estate. But then they should ask themselves, why are foreign investors not investing in Mauritius? Government brags about making progress in ease of business, but is unable to attract investors. Yet, every year, we hear the same rhetoric from the Honourable Minister of Finance, who say that there are billions of rupees of investment in the pipeline being dealt at the level of EDB, and there is a committee, high-powered committee chaired by the Honourable Prime Minister, who is going to facilitate this investment. Where are these investments? Tell us the billions of rupees of investment which you said in each of your budget that are before EDB. And even last week, you said there's 200 million, not 2 million, 200 million rupee worth of project. 200 billion, not million, billion. What that? 8 Metro Express? 8 Metro Express, which is sitting with the EDB. Tell us about it. We want to know. We want to know who are investing, where are they investing. But you choose not to mention any project before because so far none of the major projects that you've been announcing for the past 3 years have materialized. So this year, we did not hear anything about the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industry. Nothing about the investors who were supposed to set up factories to manufacture pharmaceutical products. Nothing also about the manufacturing plant for local production of COVID-19 vaccine. Do you remember? There's supposed to be production of COVID-19 vaccine and other pharmaceutical products. And the government was supposed to provide seed capital of 1 billion rupees. What happened? All bluff? All talk, but no project? But it is a matter of concern, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yesterday I was reading how Rwanda has been attracting investors. And now in Rwanda they produce mobile phones from start to finish. So why can Rwanda do it and we can't? Not us. Do we lack the necessary skill and manpower? Is our labor force too expensive? Do we have too many social charges? Is the income tax regime deterring expats from moving to Mauritius? Are we not sufficiently well connected? Being part of Africa, a member of regional organizations, we should have positioned ourselves as the gateway to Africa. But other than a fleeting reference to the government chartering a regional feeder vessel to service Eastern African country, there's absolutely nothing in this budget. Nothing in this budget about our African strategy. Not a word. Does this government believe in Africa? Yet Africa is a land of promises. Africa has an expansive population, a young, dynamic population which is increasingly educated. and there is an emerging emerging middle class in many African countries. What are we doing to tap those new markets, those new business opportunities? Do we at least have a strategy to attract tourists from African countries other than South Africa? I keep repeating myself every year, Mr. Speaker, sir, during budget time, and I keep making a plea to the government to adopt an African strategy, but it always falls on deaf ear. Désespérant. Forget about African strategy. The truth is that there is no strategy in this budget to bolster existing sectors and nothing about developing new sectors of the economy. Nothing. And in a way, the Minister of Finance makes his mea culpa at paragraph 43 of his speech when he states, and I quote, "To this end, Maurice Strategy, an economic research and planning bureau to formulate socio-economic policy, will be set up." So now he's going to set up Maurice Strategy to provide planning to formulate socio-economic policies. Excuse me, but aren't you supposed to be the Minister of Economic Planning and Development? That is what it says on your title. What does economic planning and development mean if it's not to formulate socio-economic policies? You're already in charge of a ministry which is supposed to plan, to think ahead. What have you been doing? And if you look at the Economic Development Board Act, the very first object of EDB is, and I quote, "to provide strong institutional support for strategic economic planning and ensure greater coherence and effectiveness in economic policy formulation." EDB is already supposed to be doing what you now want Maurice Strategy to be doing. So why another structure? Why another structure to put your political nominees and to incur more expenditure to waste more funds? Moving to the measures, or rather lack of measures for the financial services sector, we recently came out of the FATF grey list, out of the blacklist and the European Union list, the blacklist of the European Union and out of the UK list. The Minister of Finance himself acknowledged that, and I quote, "we need to build on this momentum. We need to advertise ourselves as a well-regulated jurisdiction. We need to get rid of this negative image that some international media portrays us, especially after the publication of the Paradise Papers. The industry was waiting for government to announce the setting up of a promotion agency with adequate staff and financial resources to undertake marketing initiatives, just like the tourism sector has its MTPA. There used to be a financial services promotion agency, but this government scrapped the agency and transferred its role to EDB. But it's not working. It's not working, and I know the Minister of Financial Services is aware of the call from the industry for a dedicated promotion agency. Yet, nothing in this budget about marketing strategy, about how to promote the financial sector. But instead, there is one measure that has been announced at paragraph 137, which is causing a lot of distress. And I read it: "To continue the overhauling of the financial services sector, the government will adapt its legislative framework to converge the domestic and global business regime." Now, this is very worrisome. If this is limited to the tax regime, I can understand. If you want to converge, to eliminate ring fencing, have unicity, one regime for global business and domestic companies, as far as taxation is concerned, I don't have a problem with that. But if you're going to change the global business regime, the legislative framework, then we have a problem, because since inception, the global business sector has its own set of legislation. It is exempt from several provisions of the Financial Services Act. It is exempt from several provisions of the Companies Act. Its books and records are confidential, not easily accessible to anyone. So, if ever you're going to change this and make a global business company at par with a domestic company, then at least consult the people from the industry, because as at today, they are very worried about this measure. Mr. Speaker, sir, very quickly, nothing to boost the ICT sector. I don't know what the Honourable Minister will talk about. Probably, again, he will talk about the Digital Industries Academy, which used to be called ICT Academy, which is there, again, every year in the budget and which is still not operational. Every time we hear that they are coming up with training. Luckily for us, operators in the ICT sector provide their own training. But nothing on how to increase connectivity, speed, lower charges, promote services. And now we are told that there will be a 5-year blueprint will be devised. So hopefully we'll have to wait for that blueprint to know the way forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget speech has a whole chapter on cleaner, greener, renewable energy. The government has undertaken to produce 60% energy from renewable sources by 2030. According to the Minister of Finance, government will produce an additional 200 megawatts from renewable sources by 2025, in 3 years' time, to increase the share of energy from renewable mix to 40%. We are, of course, on this side of the House, very much in favor of moving to renewable energy. But this is a very ambitious timeline. Very ambitious because on the same day the budget was presented, Statistic Mauritius published its statistic on energy and water for year 2021. Around 78.5% of electricity was generated from non-renewable sources, mainly coal and fuel oil, while the remaining 21.5% came from renewable sources. In 2020, the share of renewable energy was 23.9% of the energy, total energy. 2021, the share has been reduced to 21.5%. Reduction. You're talking, you given commitment that you're going to increase your share of renewable energy, and instead of increasing it, you're reducing it. In fact, electricity generated from renewable sources, according to Statistics Mauritius, decreased by 7% last year. And this is why I say that the figures advanced by the Honourable Minister of Finance are very optimistic. The Honourable Minister of Finance is expecting 20 billion worth of private investment over the next 3 years. On the other hand, the roadmap 2030 for electricity sector, which was published last month, provides that to meet renewable energy target of 60% by 2030, an estimated 1.3 billion USD is required to be invested. This works out to around 59 billion rupees. 59 billion rupees, that's a massive investment. The question is, will investors from the private sector be interested to make such massive investment if CEB will purchase electricity from them at the feed-in tariff announced by the Honourable Minister of Finance at 4.20 rupee per kilowatt hour? As far as the decision to make of all hybrid and electricity vehicles is concerned, to remove duties from all this, the Honourable Leader of Opposition has dealt with it. It's not going to make a big impact because most electric cars were already on no duty, and they were still expensive. But there is serious question marks about battery used by these vehicles, which has to be replaced after a while. And more importantly, what will happen to the battery when they are disposed of? I'm sure the Honourable Minister of Finance must have consulted the Minister of Environment and told us how he's going to dispose toxic waste represented by these batteries. In any event, it serves absolutely no purpose encouraging the use of electric vehicles if they will be powered by energy generated from non-renewable sources, as is currently the case. By the way, what happened to National Biomass Framework, which was announced in last year's budget? Not a word in this budget. Is the government still interested in generating electricity using biomass? There is no incentive in this budget given to planters to grow high fiber plants. There is also nothing about converting waste to energy. And of course, the use of ethanol as a substitute to petrol is completely off the radar. Yet this government wants us to believe that it will increase the share of renewable energy in the energy mix to 40% by 2020 and 60% by 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, at a time when this budget makes provision for 10.9 billion rupees to the public force, the whole nation is still under a state of shock. Cardinal Piat used the term horrified. Others were disgusted and traumatized. But no word can probably adequately describe the feeling one gets when one sees the graphic images of certain police officers torturing suspects in police custody. Police officers who were supposed to uphold the law and were caught red-handed breaking the law. And they did it not only once, but several times. Dozens of electric torches have now been secured in police stations, of course, all illegal weapons. Yet not a word in this budget condemning this police brutality. You had words for police officers who seize drugs, and they should be congratulated. But you should also condemn police who takes the law in their hands and torture people. You should not hide the fact. Of course, we agree that there are good law-abiding police officers who are doing a remarkable work. We praise them for that. But this should not hide the fact that certain police officers have been torturing subjects, and they've been doing it for years, and they got away with it. Suspects have even died in public custody. There has been several PQs on police brutality over the years. Has any police officer ever been convicted and sentenced for torture or manslaughter? Yet we know, in this case, that the police had a copy of the pen drive containing the clip of torture since 2020. What did they do? Cover up? Police brutality and torture is a fact. What will the government do about it? Business as usual? This is what we want to know. There is an independent police complaint commission. How effective is it? Does the law have to be changed? Does it need to have more powers? Is it properly staffed to conduct inquiries? Does it get all the cooperation it needs when it carries the inquiries? Before the independent police complaint commission, we had the police complaints division of the National Human Rights Commission. At that time also, there were reported cases of police brutality and torture. They also inquired in cases of suspects dying in police custody. Yet, there has never been any conviction secured against any police officer. Why? The harsh reality, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that certain police officers are using torture and beating up subjects and are getting away with it. We should change the system. This is why l'Entente de l'Espoir and the leader of the opposition has called upon the Prime Minister to set up a commission of inquiry, not only to hear evidence and ascertain the extent of torture of people in police custody, but more importantly, to make recommendations to improve the system and make sure that the constitutional rights of individuals are observed. Because of the seriousness of the situation, we have asked that the Commission of Inquiry be chaired by a former Chief Justice. It is also urgent, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the Police and Criminal Justice Bill to be debated in Parliament as soon as possible. In the newsletter of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, published last month, the DPP makes a very compelling case for the adoption of the Police and Criminal Justice Bill. He informs us that his office has had extensive discussion with Judge Jeffrey Rivelin, consultant on the bill on assignment from the Commonwealth Secretariat. A first version of the bill, honourable members will recall, which was known as Police and Criminal Evidence Bill, was introduced and read a first time in this House as far back as 2013. The bill will bring at least two major changes. First, it will abolish provisional charges. Second, it will provide for the appointment of a custody officer responsible for the safety and proper treatment of the suspect throughout custody. Questioning will be video recorded. There is also a proposal for confessions to be recorded in the presence of a magistrate. With this bill, the whole policing culture will change, and police will no longer be able to rely on forced confession to secure conviction. The position on this side of the House is all in favor of the introduction of this bill. And frankly, I was expecting the Honourable Minister of Finance last week to mention it in his budget speech. I was expecting him to enumerate measures that will be taken to reduce the risk of torture and death of a person while in police custody. In other countries, police officers are required to wear body camera and film every encounter they have with a potential criminal. I know this is only wishful thinking, because the reality is that in Mauritius, even cameras installed in police stations suddenly do not work at the time of death of the police or the person in police custody. But the question we have to ask ourselves is whether there is a real will on the other side of the House to change things. I have reason to ask the question when I recall what the Honourable Attorney General stated in this very August Assembly on the 25th of May 2022, a few days ago in fact, in answer to a PQ from Honourable Lobin, who wanted to know the expected date of introduction of the Police and Criminal Justice Bill. The Honourable Attorney General explained that as a consequence of COVID-19 pandemic, the legislative calendar of government had been seriously disrupted, and stated, and I quote, "There are now competing priorities where other legislation have to come first." Other priorities. Yet the same Attorney General had in July 2019, in answer to a similar PQ, stated that government was envisaging the introduction of the said bill in the House during that session, meaning in 2019, almost 3 years ago. Being given that extensive consultation has already been held, being given that the bill is ready, I make an appeal to the Attorney General to bring the bill before Parliament as a matter of priority, because nothing has higher priority than a bill to ensure that the fundamental human rights of every citizen of this country is protected. Thank you.